MP3 trailer. Recording started. Yeah. Hello, dear audience. Welcome back to the B3 Biennial of the Moving Image. Um, yeah, Today we will have a talk with Inka Winter, a talk on the importance of ethical feminist pornography in film. Thanks, Inka, for joining us this day. And yeah, the B3 Biennial has started. It's a cross-media moving image film festival in Frankfurt, Germany. And maybe I want to introduce you a little bit, Inka, beforehand. Inka Winter is an erotic filmmaker and founder of ForPlay Films, an independent and all women porn production company based in Los Angeles at the moment. Yeah, and there is one thing I can tell about Inka for sure. Um, she is the one who is changing the landscape of porn for the better. This is what I wanted to say beforehand. Yeah. Hello and welcome, Inka.
Hi, Jasmine, and thank you so much for the compliment. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. So why I'm interviewing Inka today is because I'm Jasmin Hagendorfer. I'm the creative director of the Porn Film Festival Vienna, and we know each other for quite some time now. I think personally we only met once, but your
Twice,
films have
actually.
twice actually.
The one
Really?
festival you did in LA, we went the first
Yeah.
time, and then
True
recently we
that.
visited LA, and then we met
True
again.
that, true that.
Yes,
So we
yes.
met personally two times, and for the rest of the time, the Porn Film Festival was very lucky to have Inka inside of the program. So this is how we got our first contact. Yeah, Inka, wow, we're doing this now again. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Um, I know about you that you were born in Munich
hmm
and you moved to LA, I think about 2009. Is that true and correct? And maybe you can tell a little bit about your background about, oh, yeah, what does a German filmmaker does in LA? How did you end up there actually?
I guess my life has been a little bit all over the place. I was born in Munich, and then I lived in Austria from when I was 4 to 12 in actually the Ottomühl commune, which is its own story for another day.
For that.
Um, and then I moved to Berlin, Germany, where I went to high school on an island on a lake in Berlin. And
Okay.
yeah, it was great. And then I went to college for fashion design. I actually studied economics for 2 years and then fashion design.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did an internship in both New York and Los Angeles, and I met somebody who was gonna open a store. And so I was like, hey, let's make a clothing line together. And that's actually why I moved to LA in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Is this clothing store and the company still existing? Are you still
No,
part of it?
so I still do like wardrobe and costume design for films and television and commercials. But I stopped the clothing line when I started making erotic films.
Fashion label Inca, does it really exist still? Is there still the company around? Are you still working in that field?
Well, I'm still working as a costume designer and wardrobe stylist in film and TV and commercials, but I stopped the clothing line when I started making erotic films.
Hmm. So was this like your first confrontation with the film landscape, with the film industry? And actually, of course, I think this is like the burning question of the talk. This time is like, how did you end up doing pornography? How did that happen?
Yeah, so I mean, yes, my first sort of exposure to film is as a wardrobe stylist, and I think it really did help me to have experience on set and know how set works and what is needed. And even though I do wardrobe, you kind of like see how production works because you're on set all the time and you work with production. So I think that was really helpful for me. Um, the way I started to make porn is actually kind of a personal story. So basically, I don't know, this is about like 12 years ago, maybe. I was dating somebody, I was like in a long term relationship, and I got pregnant and I had an abortion. And I lost my sex drive for at least a year, like completely like gone, like depression, like all of those things. And it's kind of like like not like the lack of libido, it really kind of like does something to you. You just feel broken, I think, in a way, or at least I did. um and sort of as I was kind of coming out of that, like after a year, I was talking to my partner and I was like, what can we do? And so we both thought maybe porn is a good option to ignite the libido. And so we looked around and we even, and this is like over 10 years ago, so the landscape of porn was different then. But we googled like porn for women, and I've been listening to Dan Savage for a long time, who's like a sex advice person here in the States. And I just didn't find anything that I liked, and everything that I saw was kind of like, yeah, that's not helping. That's sort of like, yeah, I'm like a little bit aroused because there's genitals, but also at the same time, I'm really disturbed. So I'm kind of like this even more uncomfortable because I'm not just not aroused, I'm kind of aroused and disgusted at the same time. So, um, it
I
just was
remember that.
like not a good place to be, and porn was not the answer. Just like a lot of mainstream porn, it's kind of like women are used as objects for the male pleasure.
Yeah.
um and so I was like talking to my friends and I was like, why isn't anybody doing this? And this was before, like, now there's a few more people that make porn for women, but this was like a long time ago. And everybody, and I was like, oh, we're in the film industry, we should make it. And everybody's like, yeah, haha, and laughed and just thought it was a joke. But I wasn't actually joking. And so then there was like one day I actually, and I think this, as much as I'm sort of like, the whole 50 Shades of Grey thing is, whatever, I'm not a big fan. But I think what it did is it made the world a little bit more open to sort of like sexual innuendo in things without it just, yeah. So I saw this like GQ Spain fashion video that was super BDSM sexual, no actual sex, but it was so hot. And I looked at it and I was like, this is what I want porn to be like. And coming from like the fashion background, like fashion, like style and sex, is like, yes, everything that I need to be in porn. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do it. And then I actually set out to kind of do like this teaser, like a concept of what I was envisioning. And I wasn't even thinking I would direct or anything. I just wanted to be there and facilitate this happening. And so I had a friend who was a female cinematographer and director, and she was going to help me. And then when it came to the shoot, she wasn't available anymore, and she connected me to another cinematographer. And I was like, well, so who's going to direct? And she's like, you. And I was like, okay. And that's how I started directing porn.
Okay, were you nervous? Nervous like hell?
Well, so at this time it was just a teaser, and I hadn't actually decided to make explicit films yet. At that point, I thought I could just basically do like softcore, like a sex scene in a movie, but much longer and just like beautiful and really like sexy, which I'm like, that's super hot. And then actually what happened is I somebody at Penthouse saw my film, the
Mm-hmm.
teaser. And so they talked to me about working with them, which it never happened because they went bankrupt and all of but I talked to them
Okay.
and they're like, well, actually, so we're gonna do hardcore and softcore. Is that okay with you? And I was just like, okay. And so in that meeting, I was just kind of like, I don't know, like what, I wasn't really sure. But then afterwards, I was just sort of like, okay, so I want to make, erotic films for women. Let me just ask all my friends, all my female friends, what do they want to see? And so everybody was like, well, if it's shot beautifully, we do want to see genitals too. And so I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I mean, the whole idea for me is to make it look beautiful. So yeah, I can do that. And that's
Mm-hmm.
basically how I decided to make explicit films.
Okay. But like I also made my first kind of short film like a few weeks ago, and it has
Hmm.
it's more like uh there is just a little bit of erotic scenes inside of it, and there was like this when we really shooted it and it really started. Also, for me, this is what I want to ask. It was really kind of totally overwhelming. I didn't know what to do with myself on set. Also, it's like for me, it was, for example, like, am I really doing this right now? Is it okay to be aroused at the same time and to be professional? And what to do? As there was a mixture of feelings actually when you really do this for the first time and sit there as a professional, as a director, or whatever on set. This is like, I think the first time is something very special actually, when people start doing things and things are evolving. Was it the same for you, or was it just like, I feel right on place?
Um, well, actually, like before the first shoot, I had like a lot of anxiety. And especially because I do have some trauma, like from my childhood, about being in places where there is sex happening.
Mm,
And so I was definitely sort of like, well, I don't know what's going to happen. Could go well. I could have a panic
mm.
attack. Who knows? But I'm also the kind of person who just doesn't question things and I just do them anyway, regardless of, my anxiety levels. So I showed up on set. And I think the thing for me was that, first of all, the first, I mean, 5 to 10 films that I made was all with actual couples. And it was people that I knew already.
Okay.
So I showed up, like, I actually used my friend's house as a location. Those people were there. They were just everybody that I filmed with, all the couples. They're all in this like sex positive community. They're very open. They're very used of like to talk about sex, to be considerate. And so it was actually a really beautiful experience. Everybody who was there, so it was me, a couple of my girlfriends, like, that were helping, and that couple, and everybody was basically talking. There was like this atmosphere of love in the
Mm,
air, and that's just really what it was. And I'm still like, the main, like the girl that I shot with, like who was the talent in there, I still like think about it and I'm like, yeah, you were my first, and we have this like bond, because, and then, I think with the arousal part, I feel for me most of the time I'm so preoccupied with like, what do I need to do, that I really don't have
mm,
time to really like be aroused. I mean, there's definitely moments where I'm looking and I'm noticing, oh, like this is hot. But it doesn't, um, I just don't feel like I have time to really kind of be with that.
mm. Uh, what was actually the name of your first movie, and
It was
in
undressed,
which year? Undressed.
undressed, the shower, the shower scene. Yeah.
Oh my, oh my. So one question I also wanted to ask you, because I think it's it's kind of a thing that people want to know maybe about, is like, is there a difference for you between like porn and erotica? Is there a kind of difference? How would you explain that?
So I think the best quote that I read, and I wish I could credit the person who said this, but somebody once said the difference between porn and erotica is the lighting. And I think that while that doesn't describe everything, it really gives you a pretty clear picture of sort of like the overall visual difference and the feeling of it.
Hmm.
Um, and I think now that there's like it's hard because they're like ethical porn and this and that, so there's a lot of things that make up ethical porn, but then what is erotica, what is porn? It's a very complex field, but to me that is a really good way of sort of making a distinction that's a
Mm.
valid distinction.
Okay, I think as you bring it up yourself, also I wanted to talk to you a little bit about especially those labels. Like there is now, whether you call it fair trade porn or ethical porn, feminist porn. So there are quite a bunch of labels around, which I'm not quite sure always what it really means at some point, because especially when you take alone the term feminist, feminism is such a huge word for me still, and it means so many different levels of doing something. So how would you maybe describe your own films or your ways of filmmaking? Is there a label for it, and how would you define these labels?
Hmm. Yeah, I think this is a really good question, and I think the only way to define it is for me and what I do. And I do agree. I think that those word terms are being thrown around like very loosely, and just because something is ethical, like what does that mean? I actually, with that, one of the things like porn for women, like that's also even a term where like, there's some things where it's like, some sites provide this content, but there's other questionable things happening. So
Mm,
there's it's definitely, I think, in a way you have to do your research, um see who owns the company, who is behind it, but so for me personally, like I think I actually now, I've been working with like a sex researcher, and we've been doing some writing together, and we actually have come up, or I have come up with this term holistic porn for what I
okay.
do. But so the reason, and I would still describe my porn as ethical and feminist. The reason I
Mm,
would call my porn feminist is because, um, not only do I do something that is from the perspective of the women, and it's really like about consent. So, for example, if somebody, like BDSM is this thing where it's like, yeah, like there's like physical pain to the woman, but it's consensual. She wants that, right? And
mm,
then the other
definitely.
level of what I do is that I ask the female talent who she wants to film with. And I also help, like, it's kind of a collaboration to come up with a concept. Like, I asked the talent, is there an aesthetic you like? Is there a scene that you want to shoot? Is there, like, whatever you want to film? So for me, it's sort of like this whole real pleasure, um, for women.
Mm.
It just kind of, it makes it feminist in my opinion, I guess. Yeah. um because it strengthens the female side of the sexuality.
And I think a female gaze is really much needed in the porn industry.
Yeah.
Um, do you normally exclusively work like with a female team? Do you also include men? Does this differ from set to set or also from story to story, maybe? So maybe you want to say something about that.
Yeah, so I basically, it's an all female crew. That doesn't mean that we can't have like men help us with things sometimes, and I have a grip
Mm,
that's been like helping us out a lot, who just shows up on set and helps. And but like, at least that the cinematographer, the editor, anybody who has sort of this, the female gaze perspective, like,
mm,
is a woman. I've shot a couple of films with a male cinematographer who is also a friend, who just really wants to like learn and help, and so,
mm,
um but that's just, because he came to me and he really like has been supportive. And
mm.
but yeah, so what was the second part of the question?
As first of all, if it's all female led, um, but I also want to come back maybe to the performers also a little bit.
Yeah.
How do you actually find performers? Like in the beginning, you said when you started your project, you did quite a lot of stuff with friends and people you know and couples you know. Did this change a lot during the years or the productions, or is it still the same?
Yeah, so basically, like, I started with couples that are all sort of in the sex positive community, and that's how I made my first films. And then, like, now, so with couples is you find them here and there, and they come to me also and want to film with me, but it's, it's not like a large amount overall. So if I want to have, like, at this point I want to post one new film per month on my website, and if I want to do that, I have to also work with adult performers.
Hmm.
And so I just started meeting some, and then Twitter is a good way to kind of get in touch with people. There's agencies too, that sort of where you can book talent. um, but so I just started talking to them, and then the more you kind of like film with people, the more you get to know people, the more you kind of start to be in the industry and know people. But yeah, basically I reach out to people and I explain to them what I do. I ask them who they want to film with, what kind of concept they're interested in, and then we
Hmm.
usually do a Zoom and we talk about all of that. So before we even like film, we've already really like sort of established what we're doing. Like the talent also talks to each other, what their vision is and what their boundaries are.
Hmm.
I don't really tell people how to have sex at all. It's sometimes you're on a set and it's more like a technical thing where it's like, okay, this location has these constraints, so maybe these positions are good because it sort of works with the space. Or sometimes people are like, okay, like we're kind of stuck, like what should we do next?
Okay.
But
Can
it's not
imagine
like
that.
I tell them what to do. And also, like,
Mm,
so I guess in this I didn't even, so I learn a lot by working with adult talent. I also learn a lot about the porn industry, the mainstream porn industry. So I
mm-hmm.
guess what I learned is that in a lot of mainstream porn, it's kind of like, okay, we want 3 minutes of oral, 5 minutes of this, 3 minutes of that, and then like you finish. And so yeah, we don't
Okay.
do that. It's like do whatever you're doing as long as it's pleasurable, and then when you stop like enjoying it, then go to something else that you find pleasurable. That's sort of
Mm.
how I do films.
Um, did the mainstream industry at one point ever came up to you and say, "Hey, we heard about you, Inka Winter. Do you want to do whatever this kind of production or what?" Did this ever happen, or is it just like totally away?
So it's kind of like, you know, so I've just started working with Lust Cinema, but I guess they're not, they're obviously like, indie like ethical porn field, so it's not
Mm,
really mainstream. I mean, I think if I would reach out to mainstream houses, they would be interested because there is a tendency or like a
mm,
trend to do more female centric and more ethical porn. I know that there are sites that would like to license my content, but I'm very sort of picky about what it is because I just don't want it to be in the mix with like mainstream stuff.
mm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, nobody specifically reached out to me. I actually, there was somebody, I did talk to somebody at Pornhub, but Pornhub is such a,
Mm.
it's a field of, yeah. So I'm not going to go there
Yeah,
at this moment.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just, I also realized that I mentioned holistic porn and I never talked about it. So, like, the term that I came up with about
Yeah.
holistic porn, the reason I came up with that is because I now, um, so I also, I'm trained to be a therapist, which I know you were going to ask me about that too.
Mm,
But so I try to incorporate like sort of these aspects of like humanity, and specifically what I do a lot is mindfulness into pornography. So it's beyond the physical pleasure, it's about connection and chemistry and sort of the overall well-being of the person.
Mm,
So that's why holistic seems the right term for what I do, because I incorporate other like areas of life, I guess.
mhm. Okay. Um, yeah, of course, this brings me to like the question, um, like I read also that like sexual healing or especially sexual education is a big part of your work. And you also started a new education yourself. Maybe you also want to tell the audience a little bit, what are you doing at the moment? Why is this important for you? How do you also combine those fields?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like from the beginning, I actually like I have a YouTube channel called Sex Education. So from the beginning,
Mm,
I felt that sex education is really important for pleasurable sex. Like sex is so much more than just the body parts touching each other, so there's a lot of education, a lot of knowledge that you need in order to, sort of navigate situations. Not all of the things that are pleasurable are obvious, so sex education just seemed like important from the beginning. And now that I started to train to be a therapist, again, like the main thing that I do is mindfulness.
mm,
And there's just a broad field of application of how mindfulness can improve your sex life, make it more pleasurable, um, for different reasons. So I think one of the main things, I guess I would divide it into two components. We all
mm,
know sometimes we have sex, but we're sort of preoccupied, we're stressed, we're thinking of something else. So our mind is busy doing something else while we're having sex. So we're not 100% focused on the sex. So, how can sex be pleasurable? So,
mm,
mindfulness is a tool that you can use to kind of like observe your thoughts, calm your thoughts, and sort of have more distance from your thoughts so you can actually focus on what's happening in the moment.
mm,
And then, so the other aspects are the sensations, the physical sensations. One reason that we're not as attuned to our physical sensations is obviously because our brain is preoccupied. But I think also as a society, we're just not as much in our body. We don't feel things, it's just not encouraged.
mm,
So, mindfulness is a way to kind of focus your awareness on physical sensations, so that like sometimes, let's say something is happening with your genitals, but your brain doesn't even register that you're aroused because there's just sort of this disconnect and you're not actually like really fully present to it. So mindfulness also helps you to really focus and be present to physical sensations so that your brain can register it as arousal.
mm. I think that's a really good point because I think in our society it's very often the case that you get transported that sex or especially also masturbation, solo sex is is always something that has to do with fun and joy, and like this is the way it is transported in a lot of movies and everything. But I think like there are a lot of reasons to have sex, or there are a lot of reasons also to masturbate. This can be, I don't know, anger, frustration, sadness, whatever. There's so many things happening in life, of course, and we are emotional beings. So, of course, this comes into that. And of course, sex is also part of that. Sex must not always be funny or like, pleasurable to the point of orgasm. This is not happening for everybody. Of course, it's not. So I think this is quite a cool idea to put more mindset into it, so that you all see what comes along, what's happening, where are you at the moment, and also concentrate again a little bit on the situation. Also, maybe see the situation in which you are at the moment, and maybe reflect a little bit on that.
Which
So.
also like leads to like you being more connected to your partner and sort of having this sort of connection experience that otherwise you could be missing.
Mm,
Um, and so I just wrote like I wrote a mindfulness guided masturbation, and it's going to be available as audio, but I also filmed the scene with it. So it actually like
Ah.
guides you in how to be present while touching yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I did that, and so I think that I even talked to somebody yesterday about, from my therapy cohort, and we're talking about other applications. So for example, for women that are survivor of assault victims,
Mm-hmm.
like something like that, I think I'm going to rewrite it in a way that is especially for this field, where you can slowly kind of come back in touch with your body. And there's a lot of fear and pain coming up for, assault victims. So how do you deal with
Mm-hmm.
that? Because a lot of women, I'm sure, just avoid sex because it's uncomfortable and unpleasant, because for those reasons. But so how can you bridge this um, place where you are now to get to a place where you can experience pleasure again, And so there's a lot of applications that I think I'm going to work on too, that go beyond just porn. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when you say you writing this, what do you think at what time this will be published or come out in some kind of?
It's gonna, like, I wrote it and filmed it already, so we're just
Mhm.
editing the film, and I have to go and just record the audio in a studio. So really, in the next couple of months, it'll be available.
Okay, nice,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
I think brings me also now a little bit to foreplay films and the question like, so you were doing films, you were establishing your own films, but how did you also end up putting this on a platform? Was there a use for you? How did you figure this out? How does this function? Does it really function? So what are your experiences with that actually?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, like, there's, I mean, two components. Like, I want to make my films available to the public. So in the day and age that we live in, the internet is a beautiful
Yay.
tool. So, that was, the idea of having a website where I host the films so that people can watch it.
Mm,
Um, and I had like a lot of movies like up there for free for a really long time. But obviously, at this point, I have to kind of monetize the film so that I can make more films, because it costs a lot of money to make films.
yeah, hey,
And
capitalism, we are all
yeah, and
part of
so far,
that.
exactly. And so far, I've just kind of been investing my own money into it. So yeah, like, I have a subscription based site. I mean, it's really only like $9.99 a month, and you can cancel anytime. So it
Mhm,
seems like a low investment, but yeah, it's the way that is going to help me make more films in the future by
mhm.
people subscribing. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's especially a very important point. I had this also like in a talk, which I did also about porn film festivals, whatever. And the thing about really should we pay for this and what happened, like when the internet came up and especially when all those platforms arrived, the adult content platforms. Um, of course, this was like a big woohoo in the beginning, maybe like, wow, adult content for free. Everybody can watch now porn. But in the end, I can see, so we are not totally in the end, absolutely no. At the stage where we are now, we can really definitely see that this really overtook quite a lot of things actually. And of course, it's about also recognition of work. All the things that you sometimes see there may first of all be not legally obtained. This is always like a warning that I point out, but also like you don't appreciate the work of others. Like as you told us now, many many things about yourself, about the production, about how you find people, writing the concept, the scripts. So there is so much work actually in it that people sometimes can't see it anymore maybe. And of course this is like really bad if people who really did a great job don't get paid in any kind of for that. So this is I think for me always like a good point to really please point out again. visit Inka's webpage, have a look around, and if you like something or please something, make an abo, because it's really about giving people the opportunity to work more and to do more films and to do more female focused projects. So this is really a cool thing, I think.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, back a little bit to productions and films and film sets. I wanted to ask you also, like, what was your funniest moment on an erotic film set?
Um, I was like, okay, I'm sure there's like many more like incidences that I can't remember because I think we laugh all the time about something because sex is just inherently funny in some way. There's like weird sounds, there's this and that, and then there's comments, and there's really a lot of things. Like the thing like that comes to mind, and I don't know if that's the funniest thing. It just sort of was funny to us. So we were filming. It's the film on the website is Droit de Vivre, and so we had all of this like different materials. There was like it started with a pillow fight, and then we had color pigments and this and that. And in the end, they ended up having sex in foam on the floor, and so the
Mhm.
floor was like linoleum, so it was very slippery. So at some point I put a like old shirt or something under the female talent's back so that she wouldn't like you know just
Okay.
slide around. And then so we did that. They changed positions, and so at some point the male talent like looks over to me and is like, "Can I have that traction rag?" We're like, "Okay, I guess we coined a term, traction rag, for porn in foam when you just like slide around too much."
Yeah,
Oh,
seems like a filmmaking is a lot about finding solutions, actually.
yep, yep, yep,
Yeah,
yeah.
really cool. Also, two things. When we are now directly at the films, I think I just wanted to a little bit give a glimpse on your work and what are you doing, and the both of us picked out two films. One is Fairy Tale, which was also shown during the Porn Film Festival this year, so a new production, and the other one is Tell Me What You Like. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about maybe first Fairy Tale a little bit.
Okay,
So I think our audience will have now a little bit of the possibility to watch it. But first of all, tell us a little bit about it.
okay. Yeah, so a fairy tale. So there's actually two versions of the fairy tale. There's like a long version, and then there's the short version that I had in film festivals. That's like a political version.
Hmm.
And so I really just I often start with a location, and then I'm like, okay, what can I do with this? And there was just this beautiful like fairy tale type house. And so I just planned something around that, and I knew that I wanted it to be based on sort of this traditional fairy tale idea, but also the problem with a lot of the fairy tales is there's like a lack of consent. Like for example, the film that we are doing is sort of based on Sleeping Beauty, but like the prince comes and kisses her. Did she consent to this? So I think like the two things that I did to make that sort of like stand out more is I basically he's walking through the forest and there's this apparition of the princess who's calling for him. So I think that's like the first thing is like she asks him to come. And then when he finds her, what I did is next to her we have this mirror on the side. So as he's leaning down to kiss her, in the mirror we did like a VFX thing. So we had two takes. One take was she's reaching down and she pulls him down, and one take is him leaning down. So in the film we cut it together. So he's leaning down, but in the mirror we see her actually like pulling him down towards him. So since we're in this like realm of fairy tale, it's sort of like there's this force that she is doing this while we can't see it with the naked eye. So I think that was just like the important part. um and then for the short film, that's a political version. I mean, this was, in the Trump era.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of just why this idea, why is she asleep? And oh, I guess like either way, so he comes when he finds the sleeping beauty, he brings this device and he examines her to see what is the problem. And so while he's doing that, we put in this montage of all these political reasons. There's no
Mm-hmm.
health care, racism, like all these things that were happening, as sort of like a political statement about why she can't handle life, and she just passed out, and now she has to be woken up by not just a random prince, but an ally, somebody who wants to change the world, because that's sexy. Like
Mm-hmm.
being an ally, being for social change, doing things to make the world a different place. It's a turn on. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm showing things that are a turn on from a female perspective, and you fighting for our rights and for anybody's rights who doesn't have the voice that you have. That's sexy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's
I
that.
I
Yeah.
think, dear lovely audience of the B3, you can have now a small glimpse inside of it. For more, of course, go to the website. But here it is now, the fairy tale hotness.
Once upon a time, in a far, far away land, there lived a prince. One day, as he was roaming his lands, a maiden appeared to him. Her raving beauty was enchanting. She called for him in an unspoken voice. "Come find me." He came upon an abandoned cottage. As he entered, he could feel a chill descending upon him that shook him to his core. As he made his way down to the basement, he froze in his tracks as he saw the magical creature that had led him there. She appeared to be in a deep slumber, as if not part of this world. He sat down beside her and examined her to see what evil had befallen her. As he listened closely to her heart, he could hear what ailed her in the distance. She called to him. "The king has left me without health care. His court is threatening to take away my right to choose. The children of our neighboring land are kept in cages. People of other colors are treated with such hatred. He is destroying our lands and plundering its resources. People who love differently are not treated as equals. The weight of such cruelty lies too heavy on my heart. Despair holds me captive." The prince was devastated by her pain and instantly swore to fight with her and be an ally to all of those whose voices had not been heard for centuries. His solidarity started to melt her heart and brought life to her loins. She longed for his touch, and he heard her whisper, "Kiss me." So he did, and she awoke. His gentle caress stirred new life in her. His desire to please her was so great, he used his magical crystal wands to pleasure her.
There was a second movie which we wanted to talk a little bit about. The movie's called Tell Me What You Like. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Yeah, so this one, the idea was that just because, our films are also supposed to be educational without them being like super obvious educational. You don't want to have somebody sit there and be like, this is happening now, da, da, da. But so in this one, I wanted to make it a little bit more obvious of what is the thing that the female talent is actually enjoying and finding pleasurable as the sex is happening. So the viewer doesn't just see pleasurable sex, but there's this additional like mentioning of the words, this is pleasurable, that's pleasurable. So that was like the idea of it. And so the concept is a woman comes home after a long day, she's taking a bath, she's relaxing, and she's writing in her diary about like what is the perfect encounter. And even like and so then I have the voiceover narrating what she's looking for. And even in the start, what was important to me is to say the perfect encounter and the perfect man is not about what he looks like, but it's about him being attentive, him noticing, like cues that you're giving, him paying attention to you. That's what makes a man perfect as a sexual partner. It's not like there's a lot of other things that people, but this is the thing that we're focusing on. And so then we filmed we filmed the whole thing, and then I actually sat down with maybe like 5 other women. We did a Zoom call and watched porn. And then like I had already kind of written out all the things that I wanted to highlight. And then I just got like everybody else's feedback and sort of like, like, oh, I love it how he grabs her waist. Like, oh, I love the eye contact here. So, and then I just wrote all of these things down. So there's this narration. So when you watch it, you can actually understand what is pleasurable for the woman in words.
Mhm. When I first saw the movie, it also kind of reminded me of a very flamboyant Spanish painting of the Renaissance. I don't actually remember the name anymore, but I was really like, wow, okay. Maybe there was a connection, but there was not. But this was really like a cool setting and something new and really aesthetic. So yeah, I think again there is a chance for the audience to have a look at this also a little bit. So enjoy your hot glimpses on the bodies.
When I think about the perfect way I want to be fucked, I imagine a man that is sensual, who takes it slow and knows how to read the cues my body gives. I imagine someone who takes his time, like this is the only moment and place he wants to be. Without being in a rush, he's kissing my neck and shoulders. I feel the warmth of his breath. His lips find my lips. His body is pressed against mine. My knees are getting weak.
Ah, wow. So we had a quick look into your work, which was very pleasurable. Thank you for that, actually. And I think when the audience wants to see more or make an abo or support you in any kind of way, maybe you also want to say your website again. So where do people find all those wonderful things that you are doing?
Yeah, it's www.forplayfilms.com, and the foreplay it's a play on words, so it's for and play. So foreplay without the E, and films. But all the links lead to my website because I own foreplay films with the
Hmm.
E.com also.
Yeah. I think the last things I wanted to know is like, uh, is there a new vision, a new plan, a new work that you're doing? Is there something in the tube already that people will see quite soon? So what's happening? What's going on?
So many things are happening. Actually, this upcoming weekend, I'm gonna shoot sort of a tantric scene where I record like I wrote a sort of a tantric like meditation where the couple is just kind of connecting before sex, with sort of like touch and just sort of listening and silence and be present, in order to make the sex more pleasurable and connected. And then I have many other things coming up, and I guess you'll just have to wait and see. Oh, actually, what I actually really love too, which I'm gonna post soon on the website. I filmed a couple who's like an actual couple doing a BDSM scene. It's like not super intense or whatnot. It's like kind of a mild one. But I have this conversation ahead of time where they're just talking about what they're going to do, why they're doing it, what they like about it for like 10 minutes. And it's just so beautiful. And I feel like it makes you understand more what BDSM is about and why people do it. And maybe it'll inspire you to try something kinky too.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. One last question before I'll let you out of that interview again. Um, is there like kind of a, a vision or an idea or maybe a person, something that you always wanted to do, like kind of this is on my bucket list, I want to film in this specific location, or I want to shoot with that person because I would love to do that actually, but at the moment there was no chance to do so. Is there something like that in your mind a little bit?
There isn't anything specific like that, but I have thought in the future something that would be kind of cool would be to kind of do a world tour and just find couples and people in different cities all over the world and just travel around and shoot porn like in different cities with different people in different locations and just sort of, I don't know, that just sounds like fun.
Vienna welcomes you. I would support that
Yay.
totally, yes. And I think also Frankfurt. I'm just taking over not a role of P3 Biennial, but I think they would do so. Yeah. Thanks for letting me ask you quite a lot of questions already. We're coming to an end at the moment. And thanks for being here. Thanks for giving us a lot of insights and also to really do quite a lot of intimate and personal stuff about your story and what's behind on all of that. And yeah, I just want to
Thank
say,
you.
yeah, you're welcome. And I just want to say to the audience, please watch more porn because porn actually really can be lustful, honest, and self empowering. Yes, it is. Ich denke, das war's.
And that's a wrap.
Oh my ganz bitte.